So if you guys remember a little while ago, I released this video comparing the iPad Pro to the iPad mini 5th generation. Well, since that video, I have sold my iPad Pro and have just been rocking with that 5th gen iPad mini, hoping that they release the new 6th generation. Now, rumors were spread that a 2021 iPad mini was coming out, but I'm sure, as we all know, you can't necessarily trust the rumors as 100% truth, because then you just might end up disappointed. Well, I'm happy to say the rumors were true, everyone was correct, and thus came out the 2021 iPad mini 6th generation. Okay, so I'm sure, as you guys might know by now, I am not a technical savvy person. I don't really care about the specs of a device, just as long as it fits into my workflow efficiently. If I cared about specs, I would not have gone from an iPad Pro to an iPad mini to begin with, but it ended up working for what I needed it for. And if you want more details on my workflow with the iPad mini and how it compares to the Pro, you can check out my recent video. I'll link it somewhere in one of those cards. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break up this video into features that I found with the iPad mini that I thought were essential for my use case and what I use this guy for. So I'm gonna go over the highlights and one key downside with this guy that I'll touch on later. And if you wanna go ahead and skip around this video, you could just hover your mouse over the video to see some timestamps, or if you head on over to the description, there'll be timestamps listed below. So we're gonna kick things off with one of the biggest takeaways and one of the biggest features for me for the Apple iPad mini 6th gen, and that would be the 2nd generation Apple Pencil support. One of the biggest downsides for me by using the older generation iPad mini was simply the fact that it uses the 1st gen Apple Pencil. I'm not sure why that pencil is still in existence today. I just think the storage mechanism was not fleshed out, the charging mechanism was not fleshed out. All in all, it was like a very rudimentary product. It wrote really well, don't get me wrong, but every other aspect of it just wasn't great. Anyway, the problem does not exist anymore because with the new iPad mini, you have the 2nd generation Apple Pencil support, and you could just simply, if I could flip this around, connect it just like that. Now, it does take up the entire side of the iPad mini, which I'm not gonna lie is kind of funny to see. And it also required the relocation of the volume buttons from over here to the top, but I think it's a small price to pay for having 2nd gen support to begin with. Whether it's using the iPad mini for sketching out ideas or note-taking or just scribbling because I'm bored, this really does tick all the boxes for me. Now, we've seen this before with the iPad Pros and the new iPad Air, but just having it on this tiny little form factor is just kind of nice. Now, one thing I will say is that when the Apple Pencil is on here, it is kind of awkward to hold the iPad mini because I'm so used to kind of palming it like that and getting stuff done with it being held all in just one hand. But when you stick the Apple Pencil on there, it gets kind of difficult to hold with one hand, and it's also, you risk the pencil slipping out. It's a very small problem. I wouldn't say it's an actual big deal, but it is just something to note that it kind of gets awkward holding this with the Apple Pencil attached. Now, this one is pretty obvious if you've seen anything about the iPad mini, but having this bigger screen is a killer for actually using this iPad on a day-to-day basis. It's big enough for literally everything that you might need an iPad for, whether it's note-taking, sketching, like I said before, or if you wanna hop on, read some ebooks, it's also great for that. And I wanna double-click on the ebooks aspect on this iPad for a sec. I've been trying for years to get a good ebook experience on any device. I've tried every iPad, basically. I've tried my phone, I've tried my laptop, which really only lasted for like 10 minutes before I realized it's kind of dumb. And I've also tried Kindles, which is the biggest competitor, I think, for using this for an ebook standpoint. Now, while Kindles are cheaper, the minimalist side of me was kind of irking to not use a Kindle because it's good for only one thing. Whereas if you have an iPad mini or an iPad with a smaller size, you can use it for everything else as well. The 6th gen iPad mini is probably the best ebook experience I've had on any small form factor device in a very, very long time. This iPad mini is literally a perfect sidekick with the screen size, with everything it has going on for everything that you would need an iPad to do. And let me go off on a tangent for 1 second because I've dealt with this for a long time. I have tried for so long to make my iPad a laptop replacement for me. And I've tried so many different ways to do it, but in the end, it came down to just, I'm gonna use a laptop for everything I need, and I'm gonna use an iPad for the things that I'm not gonna use my laptop for. I kind of tried to bridge the gap between them, but I realized that it's just not gonna happen at this point. So going back to the mini size, going back to a smaller iPad has made me feel like I can use this as a regular iPad again and not try to force myself to replace my laptop with it. My laptop is good for all the tasks that it does, and this iPad is good for everything that my laptop simply isn't capable of. And I like that separation between both devices. It also really helps that it's a small size, so I can have both of these in my bag, for example, and not feel the weight of a full-size iPad Pro. It's just something to think about. All right, now the speakers have to be one of the, I think, least anticipated changes that people were excited about, but it's one of the biggest for me. Being a user of the 5th generation iPad mini, the speakers on that were just not great. Pair that with the fact that all the videos I watched were letterboxed like crazy, just wasn't a great media consumption experience. Having the stereo speakers, having a bigger screen, having basically everything that this iPad does, it makes watching YouTube videos, watching Netflix, watching Hulu, watching whatever you normally watch an actually good experience again. Now, everything that I mentioned should have sucked on the older iPad minis because frankly, it was just a dated experience for way too long. Listen, trying to go from the iPad Pro to the iPad mini, especially when I was making that video, was really tough because anytime I wanted to watch any video, I would go for my laptop instead of my iPad. But with this now, having the smaller size but the bigger screen, the nicer speakers, it makes watching videos actually a thing again. It makes me want to reach for my iPad instead of my phone and frankly leave my laptop completely out of the equation now because it's just so light, so easy to pick up, so easy to start using, and it just has a really good experience for consuming media. Okay, now this kind of bugs me. I'm happy that this has USB-C. Obviously, it's so much more capable for everything that you might want to use an iPad for, but Apple, if you're gonna put USB-C on the iPad mini that is supposed to be like basically just a bigger phone, why would you not just put USB-C on the new iPhones to begin with? Whatever, I'm not gonna complain, but the one little thing is that I went from carrying a lightning cable when I was bringing my iPad and my phone to now needing a USB-C cable when I'm bringing my iPad and my phone. So small things like that, not a big deal, but Apple, come on, just put USB-C on the iPhone. I don't get it anymore. Whatever, regardless, having USB-C on the iPad basically opens up the door to anybody that wants to use this for more than the stuff that I mentioned. Anybody that wants to use an iPad for video editing or for photo editing, for doing anything that's a little more intensive and needs some external dongles to get that work done is totally capable on this guy now. I know that I've used the USB-C accessories on my iPad Pro to import footage from my camera and then edit stuff directly on the iPad, so having that capability now is pretty cool. Now this does not rock the Apple M1 chip, which the new iPad Pros do, but it does have an A15 chip, which I think is more than capable for anything that just everyday people like you and I might be doing on this. Even advanced 4K video editing, I'm almost sure can be done on this guy as well, so I just wouldn't really worry about that. Now, there is a thing that there's no official keyboard attachment for this guy just yet, if there ever will be. So anybody that wants to use this for like super advanced video editing with shortcuts and stuff, you probably aren't gonna be able to unless you buy a Bluetooth keyboard, which I wouldn't recommend. Ultimately, USB-C is a very welcomed addition on the iPad mini, and I cannot complain that it's here. It's been lacking for a very long time. And next in line, please, would be the iPhones. Now, I said I was gonna get into downsides, but frankly, there isn't any that I've found. Besides one that is super nitpicky that probably doesn't really matter, it's the fact that the volume buttons are at the top. It's such a small change that I just, for some reason, cannot wrap my head around getting used to it. I can't tell you how many times I'm watching a video and I, for some reason, think the volume buttons are here and then the next best thing is here, so I'll just lock the iPad in the middle of a video. It's really just not great. And I've had it for maybe a week, so I'm hoping that I get used to this eventually. It's such a small thing, but it's those little changes that can like break a user experience for me. I wouldn't worry about that. I wouldn't give that as a reason to not get the iPad mini if you've been eyeing it for a little while, but it is just something to think about, I guess. All right, that's gonna wrap up this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed my experience with the iPad mini after 1 week. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving the video a like, consider subscribing, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.